Today we can send text, emails, and tweets at the push of a button. History books will trace our modern-day communication back to Samuel Morse and his invention of the telegraph. And in most accounts, it seems as if he created the idea out of thin air. But Morse didn't invent the telegraph. He got his idea from an already existing system. For thousands of years before Morse, humans had been trying to perfect long-distance communication. The oldest account comes from ancient Mesopotamia. King Sargon kept sending out messengers that were getting attacked and killed on the way to their destination. Finally, he started making the messengers carry a homing pigeon with them. If they were attacked or killed, they would release the pigeon, which would return to the palace so that the king would know to send another messenger. Almost 1,000 years later, the Babylonians faced the same issues, but instead of using homing pigeons, they started posting guards along their travel routes so that travelers and messengers would be protected. Herodotus, the great Greek historian, wrote that Xerxes, the ruler of Persia, built upon this idea. Xerxes created guard post buildings that each had their own messengers that would relay their message from one post to the next. Because a single messenger didn't have to travel the entire route, the Persian message system operated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The Greek historian even called it the greatest land-based message system in the world. The Persians' arch-enemies, the Greeks, came up with a relay system in response to invaders like the Persians. The Greeks built a network of guard stations that started by the ocean and linked up all the way across the mainland. Each guard station would be a mile or so apart and was given an identical pot full of water and a stick that floated in the pot. The stick had codes letting the Greeks know what type of enemy was approaching. The first guard would raise a torch, and once acknowledged by the guard at the other station, they would both open a spigot on their pot to release water. The stick would move downward, highlighting a specific code and letting the other guard station know what type of enemy was approaching. Plenty of other examples of long-distance communication exist, and we could even point to events like Paul Revere and his warning system using lanterns and then his ride. But perhaps one of the greatest long-distance communication systems ever invented came from a Frenchman named Claude Chappe in 1793. Chappe created the word telegraph when Samuel Morse was only an infant. Chappe's telegraph system, known as the semaphore line, consisted of hundreds of messenger towers that spanned the entire country of France. Each tower had a device on top of it, made up of two wings attached by a horizontal pole. The device could be manipulated into many different shapes and angles, to which Chappe attributed messages. Put in this context, Morse's code system looks remarkably similar to Chappe's. Chappe would then place two attendants at each tower. One would have a telescope and would receive the message from the tower before his in line. The other attendant would then rig the device to match the previous tower. The cycle would continue until the last tower received the message. Messages could be passed at almost 1,500 kilometers an hour. That's faster than a plane. Realizing the value of Chappe's system, France immediately started building towers. Many historians will even credit the semaphore line with helping Napoleon's army become such a dominant force in Europe, because he could communicate with France even when his army was off at war. Almost every other European power began to copy France's system. The state of Massachusetts even employed the system to send up-to-date trading prices from the port at Martha's Vineyard back into the city of Boston. Unfortunately, Chappe's semaphore line has been largely overshadowed by Morse's electric telegraph. But ironically, when the electric telegraph first came to France, the government elected to keep the semaphore line for another decade because they were worried that the electric telegraph could be too easily sabotaged by cutting its wires. So remember, long before humans had Wi-Fi or social media, they were able to innovate, and it was these inventions with no wires or electricity that helped us create our modern-day society.